Hello and welcome to the June 2023 ANA webinar. In celebration of Pride Month, the topic for today's webinar is cultivating relationships with Native LGBTQ plus communities. We appreciate everyone for attending today's webinar. This webinar is made possible by the Administration for Native Americans, or ANA. ANA strives to promote self-sufficiency for Native Americans by providing discretionary grant funding for community-based projects and training and technical assistance to eligible tribes and Native organizations. There are 5 grant programs under ANA available to Native communities. ANA's vision is that all Native communities are thriving. Okay, there are 4 regional centers that work with ANA to provide support through trainings and technical assistance to tribes, tribal organizations, and Native people in Hawaii and the U.S. Pacific Territories. The Pacific region serves Hawaii and the Pacific Island Territories. The Western region serves states from the Pacific coast up to Montana and down to New Mexico. Eastern region covers the states from the Dakotas to Texas and the Atlantic coast. And the Alaska region serves the entire 49th state in the Union. ANA's regional training and technical assistance centers offer free trainings, technical assistance, webinars such as this, as well as useful tools and guides to assist you in preparing applications to ANA and supporting projects once they are funded. Okay, and here is a look at our 2 lovely presenters today. Today's webinar is hosted by the Alaska Region TTA Center. My name is Eric Watson. I am a Inupiaq, Athabascan, and currently reside in Eagle River, Alaska. I'll be the moderator for today's session. I'm also joined by my coworker, Larry Gaikayayuk, who will be introducing our 2 amazing presenters. Today's webinar will give us the opportunity to listen to 2 impactful figures that have provided extensive work in Native communities, providing leadership, advocacy, and social justice. They will share their personal insight into acknowledging and working with the Native Two-Spirit LGBTQ plus communities, tips on how to navigate the fluid and perverted identities of our Native LGBTQ plus relatives. In sharing their journey, they will talk about the evolving conditions of our communities, including the LGBTQ community. During today's webinar, please feel free to ask your questions in our chat. Following the discussion, we'll have a Q&A opportunity for the group and our presenters. Before we begin, I would like to ask Hina to start the webinar with a chant. Hina, would you mind starting us off?
O kaulae ke akua e nana mai kau mau pula pula e ola kaniko o ahau maka I ole a palala uhala a ka ui ka pu ane ane a laila lave a ku oe a u I ke alo wa ke a e o ka uola e ke a kua e nana mai kau mau pula pula e ola kaniko o ahau maka I ole a palala uhala a ka ui ka pu ane ane a laila lave a ku oe a u I ke alo wa ke a e ola e ola la e ola loa hae ola 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 mahalo.
That was amazing. Mahalo, Hina.
Mahalo.
Okay. I would like to now turn it over to Larry.
Brianna, Eric. Today's presenters are Mary Jim and Hina Wang. Mary Jim is of the Zuni people clan and born for the Towering House People clan. This is how she identifies as Dene, or Navajo person. She is from the Tisna Ozjin, I hope I pronounced it right, where she grew up and currently lives in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Maddie has been active with the transgender advocacy and the HIV prevention field for the past 20 years and more. Maddie currently is employed with the First Nations Community Health Source as a supervisor for HIV prevention programs. She is also a community co-chair and a decision-making member for the New Mexico Community Planning and Action Group, which addresses HIV prevention within the state of New Mexico. She's also a board member for Transgender Resource Center of New Mexico, a council member for the SWIWC Native LGBT Two-Spirit Advisory Council, a peer faculty member for the Indian Health Service Trans Affirming Care ECHO, a transgender advocate, a trainer, a consultant, and an extraordinary person. Maddie's journey has been blessed since she started her sobriety several years ago. Joining her is Hiliwa Kalu. She is Kanaka Maoli, which is a native person descended from the original inhabitants of the islands of Hawaii. Ina, I believe, is one of Hawaii's and the world's pearls and wears many leis. She is a teacher, and I know she will enlighten you today, a respected culture bearer, a media maker, and a leader in her community and beyond. Ina is also Mahu, which is the native Hawaiian acknowledgement of third gender people in their communities. And I love what she has said on a post somewhere. Our survival as indigenous people depend on our ability to know and practice our own cultural traditions, to speak and understand our language, and to feel an authentic connection to our own history. We need to be active participants in telling our own stories in our own way. We are very honored to have Maddie and Hina to share today. And I will turn it over to Maddie.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Larry. Yat eshe Marijim and Shenash Ejidananshlan Kia Ani Bashichin, Twabahantashachedot Senachinita 8,000. Hi, everyone. I am Marijim. I'm of the Zuni people clan, born for the Town House people clan. And I am originally from a place called Senaushchin, where I grew up and where my lineage is from. And I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the introductions. Thank you for the group for inviting me to be part of this discussion, which I feel is very important, especially for this month. And I know that we only have a limited amount of time, so I will try to put my life story and my teachings and whatever I've learned in the next 20 to 25 minutes. So I usually tease my friend Elton, like I say, I'll talk about my saga. But I identify as a Native transgender woman. I knew that at age 4 that I felt I was born in the wrong body, and knew at a very young age, and grew up in that mindset and having to deal with dysfunction in my family. There was alcoholism, abuse, and non-acceptance of who I was. And as I was growing up, I came from a home where I feel it was more traditional. There was traditional teachings, there was traditional components that were instilled in me, but didn't feel that that teaching was carried on due to factors such as boarding schools. My mom and my dad went to boarding school, and they went through an era where kids were punished or told not to talk their language or looked down upon. So I remember when I was in high school, I wanted to go to school at Wingate boarding school, and my mom and dad were against it because they didn't want me to go to a boarding school, even though I had a lot of friends who were going there. So I had to go to public school. So having to go through that, I grew up knowing where I was from, and mostly talked English in our household. And that was another factor of boarding school, is that we really didn't talk our Navajo language because of boarding school. I heard a lot of Navajo with my grandmother, my grandfather, my relatives speaking a lot of our language. And for me, I feel like my family was pushing it aside. So as I was growing up, I knew I was different. So as I was growing up, I was living a life sort of like hiding, and just really didn't click with me for a number of years. So after high school is when I really started coming out and being who I am and live freely and hanging around with my friends who were like me. And I remember getting a job at a nursing home at around age 19 and 20, and I worked there for 10 years. And I look back on that and I feel very fortunate and lucky and proud that I got to work there, because it was a nursing home, and the primary residents that were there were Diné Navajo elders. And I can say that I learned and relearned my language, my culture, traditions, stories from the elders that were in that nursing home, and really like take that into consideration of how I kind of pushed my cultural and traditional teachings aside because of colonization and assimilation. So throughout those years, I was really fortunate and started asking questions, and especially with my gender identity, knowing that I was different. So asking questions of the elders of like people like me, and they would talk about stories of how they had friends who acted like me. Like they would say that they would like drive places in their wagons, or they'd hang out, or they'd have friends who they were screaming on top of the hill, having fun and just being themselves, and sort of like the stuff that we did in my generation of hanging around with each other. So they told similar stories. And I believe this was around like in the early 1940s, 1950s, because the elderlies were pretty much oriented in that time. So just having to learn that. And I realized that after those 10 years of what I was missing out on. So I think that really made me grasp my idea of like what I wanted to do, especially with relearning stuff. So I took it to heart and started to relearn the language, relearn the culture and traditions. I've attended ceremonies wanting to relearn the songs, learning the prayer, the components of our prayer and our traditions. So things that I've heard when I was younger kind of came back. And even identity, my identity, even though I identified in Western concepts as a Native transgender woman, I am Diné first and foremost. And I am of the people in my clans. How I introduced myself is I'm of the Zuni people clan, born for the Townhouse people clan. So that's who I am first and foremost, is of my people. And then I identify as, in Western terms, as a Native transgender woman. But it took a while for me to learn that and to realize that, because I was so enthralled in gay pride when I first came out. I came out before the word transgender, and I remember hearing about Stonewall, the rainbow stickers and the flags, and gay this, gay that, and stuff. And I really didn't hear the word transgender until the late 1990s when I started advocacy work. I've been doing transgender advocacy for about over 25 years now, and hearing that word, I identified with it. So that's what I ran with in Western concepts. But as I was relearning a lot of stuff, I realized my identity and my true self and where I come from. So I think that's the part where I realized that my teachings were instilled in me, but I never really grasped onto it. So moving forth, I'm really embracing that and being proud of that, because a lot of times with assimilation and acculturation, we're taught not to like our culture, our traditions, or not speak our language, or we're encouraged to not do that. And for me, I felt embarrassed at a young age and stuff. So that's what I did, is I pushed it away. But I'm really glad that I embraced it and come back to that, because that's my true identity and what makes me happy now. And doing the teachings that I do. And I do like a lot of trainings around trans advocacy work, and also doing trainings around like how one identifies. Like in some of the trainings, the 4 basic concepts of identity, of your like sex assigned at birth, your gender identity or your gender expression, and then also your sexual orientation plays a big part in how you identify yourself. Like all of us in this room under that 4 components can identify ourselves. Like for me, my sex assigned at birth was male and I was born male. My gender identity is transgender woman. My sexual expression, my gender expression is female because I present myself as a woman, dress as a woman, present myself to the world as a woman. And on my sexual orientation, that one kind of gets a little tricky and makes people's eyebrows go up because I say that I'm a heterosexual trans woman. And then people, because of what they've learned or what they've been taught, that's why their eyebrows are raised, because they feel and they know that I was born male. So they're thinking, oh, well, you have that part and your partner has that part, so you must be gay, which is not true. So for me, if I identify as a woman, I carry myself as a woman, so I'm a heterosexual trans woman. So in the trainings, I usually tell people, like, don't think about what's between my legs, think about what's between my ears. Because a lot of times within gay culture and also transgender populations, a lot of times people are thinking about our sexual organs. And I'm like, isn't that a little perverted? So how do we step out of that comfort zone? How do we step out of those things? Because before Stonewall, we had Native LGBTQ two-spirit populations. We had populations before colonization. And we have to really look at history and how that plays a big part in our identity too, versus today, because a lot of times within our gay communities, where there are negative talk about us, there's negative media, there's negative things that are said about us, even from our own community, which is part of that lateral oppression that's been put upon us. And within our identities, I know that we were part of it. Even when I was at the nursing home, I remember a grandmother running her fingers through my hair. And I was like, why are you doing that, Grandma? And she was like, it'll bring me good luck. For somebody like you, it brings good luck. And they would talk about how you're not supposed to laugh about them. You're not supposed to tease them. You're not supposed to bother them, that they're important in your family. And I strongly believe that. When you go to ceremonies, you see us cooking, helping, organizing, doing things. I was at a Nda, which is a week ceremony, and I was there, even though I pulled my back and my side was hurting, I still helped out. But as I looked around, I saw my friends, I saw my brothers and sisters. They were building fires, they were taking in water. I walked outside and looked across to all the other tents that were up, and saw more of my friends that were cooking and helping and being a part of the ceremony. And even some of our medicine people are identified within the LGBTQ two-spirit spectrum. So knowing that we still do that, and those were our roles. I strongly feel that a lot of that was part of our roles in our communities and how we presented ourselves and stuff. And I think our community has learned and taken into consideration a lot of the Western colonized concepts that we tend to partake in things. Like, I've been sober 28 years now, and I used to party and drink and tear it up and stuff, thinking that was gay life. But after I sobered up, and I was like, that's not me. That's not who I am in my identity. So I try to carry myself in a good way and try to present myself in a good way also too. And then also, that's an extension of who I am, is that my family, that's who I represent. My immediate family, my grandmother, my grandfather, the lineage I come from, the clan system that I come from. So for me, I feel like if I help out and live in a good way, that's how people will see my family. Like, where is she from, or what family is she from? And I'm very fortunate to come from my immediate family that accepts me now. Back then they didn't, because of my father and how he was very controlling, but now my immediate family really accept me. My nephews and nieces, they call me auntie. My distant relatives always want me to come to ceremony, or they want me to come home. Like, you make things fun, you make people laugh, you make it exciting, come back and be with us and help us and stuff. So I take that into heart, because I feel that's part of our Native culture, is getting together, eating and having fun, laughing and learning, and giving guidance to our relatives. So I've come to a place where I feel that I'm a part of my community and want to move back to my community. I've been gone for 15 years and I currently live in Albuquerque, but I'm making plans on moving home in the next year or two and possibly work for my tribe or possibly work and help my people, because I am of my people. So that's what I want to do. And it's not going to be based on me being transgender. It's me based on being Maddie, who is Dene, who's going to move back home and live among my people and possibly help my people or work with my people and do that. And if it's LGBTQ two-spirit populations who I'm going to be working with too, that's a bonus and a plus for me. So there's a lot of things that I want to do. And within our teachings and our trainings that we do, we also talk a lot about like pronouns and how we identify ourselves. And a lot of times it's through colonization or Western concepts that we've embraced that, like with pronouns. I just had a conversation this afternoon with some friends, and there are a couple of friends who don't use pronouns. They don't want to use pronouns and stuff. So there are people who use them. There are people who don't use them. And I feel like when I look back for generations, like I don't think that was a part of our populations. We were just who we were and lived a life that we needed to live and be who we are. So can I do a time check? How many minutes do I have?
I wish we didn't have to give you a time limit because this is really good. I think we have about 6 minutes.
Okay, I'll talk for a few more. So, so yeah, as I was saying that like with pronouns, depending on who you are, and then as service providers, because we live in that world where we're working with our communities, and those do come into play. Like, how do you address people? Like with trans populations, like if you make a mistake, just apologize and move on. Because a lot of times when people get my pronouns wrong, or if they say the wrong thing, they're apologizing profusely, like, oh, I'm really sorry I said that. I'm really sorry. And then you're like, okay, you apologize. Just shut up. Let's move on. But the thing is that for me, like I come from a teaching realm where like I'll be open with anybody, like anybody in this like room. If you had like personal questions, and like I said, people usually think about our genitalia, and if you want to know how I've had sex, just ask me. Shoot, I'll tell you. But don't ask that of other trans people. I'm saying that I will give you information. Don't ask that of other people. So you have to be really cognizant of like the questions you ask or how you ask those questions. Asking what pronouns do you use, or what name do you go by. And I think throughout the years, as I do trainings with tribal communities, one of the biggest things is documentation. Asking somebody if they go by a different name, or if they go by what pronouns they go by. And a lot of times I've heard stories where in offices, they're like, well, you haven't changed your name legally, so I got to call you this, which is not true. It's just, it won't hurt just to ask if they go by a different name, if they look different. But sometimes people can be malicious. People can be biased, and a lot of it's influenced by what they've learned, what they've heard. And I tell people in trainings also too, like, hate is learned. We learned how people are taught how to hate. I've heard negative things while growing up, faggot, queer, homo, like where did that come from? Who taught us that, or who taught you that? Who influenced you that word? And if somebody says it in a family over and over, kids will pick up on that. It's very true. People will pick up on that. And how do we come together as a people to not utilize that? And I hear decolonization a lot. And for me, I'd rather use, let's relearn things. Let's relearn our history. Let's relearn our culture. Let's relearn the language. Let's relearn the true stories of who we were and where we came from, rather than embracing foreign concepts, foreign things that were instilled in our communities, which was forced down our throats in the relocation era, the boarding school era and stuff. And people talk about killing the Indians, save the man concept. And I feel that's still around. We're just looking at it in a different way. So how do we change that? How do we relearn those things within our cultures and our teachings? And how do we teach the younger ones? Like for me, I come from a loving place where I want to teach the younger generation things. If they ask me questions, I'm very honest with them and tell them truthfully of how things have been. How do we relearn your cultures and your language and stuff? And I think growing up in an era too, I think has really made me strong too. Like I grew up without electricity and running water till I was 19. So we hauled our water, we lit our Coleman lamps and our kerosene lamps, and we herd sheep, and we hauled our water and hauled our woods for heat and stuff. So I really embraced that and not be embarrassed about that. So if ever there was a time when I had to move back to the land and live off the land, I could do that. I could do that, and that would be great. I wouldn't sweat it. Like when Y2K happened, everybody's worried, like, what do we do? What do we do? So, oh, just go move back to the reservation, go be with grandma. Shoot, I'll be okay. But I think as a Native people, what we learn, we have to question sometimes too, especially when it comes from negative concepts. And a lot of times, even with religion has played a big part in some of the discrimination that has happened to our Native LGBTQ2 spirit populations. And I think I'm coming down to my last minutes, but I also want to touch up on anthropology. So there are stories of our populations. There are documentation of people who are Native LGBTQ2 spirit in our population. And with anthropology, I tell people it was one-sided. It was their side and how they looked at us. And it came from a negative aspect. If we had anthropologists who were us back then, our stories would be different. Our story would have been of inclusion, of empowerment, of talking positive about our tribes and not be considered savages or even the word berdash, like people didn't know that was like the definition was a kept slave boy for unnatural purposes. So if a foreign person saw that and described us as that, that's where that negativity is, because that's what they saw. They saw something that was unnatural to them, and that's how they described it. For our population, it wasn't. It was a relationship. It was love, being with somebody who you care. So how do we rethink those? How do we relearn those? I'm sorry, my throat's kind of scratchy. I'm actually in DC right now, and there's like so much smoke. It's crazy. They canceled the LGBTQ event that was going to happen at the White House lawn. They postponed it till Saturday, so I'm not going to partake in that, which is okay. But yeah, I think my time is up, and I think I will turn it over to our next presenter. But I want to say that if you guys want to get a hold of me, have questions, want to talk, have a discussion, I'm fine with that also too. There's so many stuff that I could talk about. We could have discussions or do things, or even trainings could be part of this too. So I'm open to that and stuff. So I don't know if there was any questions. But yeah, I will end it there, and I will say, Ahiaha, thank you for having me. And I will turn it over to my sister, Hina.
Aloha mai, aloha mai kako, o wau no keia, o hina le moana, wang kalu, a wahana ia no wau I ko mako pai aina nei o ia hoi o Hawaii. A o ko aina ha nau no hoi o ahu, a ke noho nei no wau, I keia awawa o nu uanu. O lani huli ka mauna kau mai luna, he e kolu no wai holo ana I kai o mamala. O ia hoi o puehuehu wai kahalulu me nu'uanu. It is a privilege and honor to share this opportunity with you all today. As I mentioned, I am Hinalei Moana Wang Kalu. I am the child of Georgette Moana Matias and Henry Dayao Wang. I am the grandchild of Mona Kananiokalani Kealoha and John Furtado Matias, and of Edith Gumgiu Lop and Henry Gunlim Wang. And I invoke the names of my genealogy. I mention my parents and grandparents, and through them, I reach further to call upon my ancestors to stand with me in this space today. Um, Mahalo, Sister Maddie, for tossing me the ball, and mahalo to you, Larry, for inviting me to be here. I I resonate with that which was shared with you by Sister Maddie, and I would say that the way I introduce myself to you is also indicative of a shared sentiment that I identify as my people do, and I am Kanaka. And to be Kanaka means to have a relationship with the land and with the the places and spaces that my people come from. Um, I I do work now in my community based um, on this understanding. Currently, I'm privileged to hold the designation of cultural ambassador for the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement. And I should put in a plug just in case any of you are wanting to run away and take a vacation. Please come to Las Vegas. We will be there engaging our people that have moved away to the continent. Um, Majority of my people have moved to your lands, and they live throughout the continental US, otherwise known uh, as we have learned it from your people, Great Turtle Island. So we say Mokuhonu these days, known to the world as America. We will be having a panel on Mahu, and we will be having a show that night. So come on down, check us out at hawaiiancouncil.org. Okay, thank you for my soapbox plug. But like Sister Maddie, I I am Kanaka first, and to acknowledge pronouns, to have to label myself in the ways that a Western perspective does, isn't my first narrative. It is something that I understand and I am able to interface with, but in an effort to do my work in the community, which is to uplift and empower my people in whatever way I can. And that comes from speaking about elements of our history, our language, and our culture, of which I am fluent in my language, and I'm very fortunate to have been groomed to speak it from native speakers. And so, you know, the how do I say it? The perspectives that I've gained, especially from upbringing in not only my biological family, but my extended family that has groomed me to speak our language, and also from our cousins in the South Pacific Ocean, our cousins that occupy the islands of Polynesia, from Tonga, Samoa, Tokelau, Tuvalu, Aotearoa, Rapa Nui, so many more islands. We come from a people of the ocean. We're ocean people, and learning my language has afforded me the opportunity to learn other dialects of our people of the Pacific. As I reflect on the journey that I am on, it's been 33 years now since I graduated, and right at that time, leaving Kamehameha School here on this island of Oahu, I found myself immediately surrounded by so many opportunities to raise up my voice and show up and be present at so many different things. And over the years, very fortunate to have earned the respect and love from my community. I don't really try to call myself any sort of anything, but I've been fortunate to be looked at as a community leader. And the reason why there's any validity or credibility to the name Kumuhina, although you see the name Hinale Moana Wang Kalu on the screen, any credibility is because I just made it a priority to help stand up for my people. And that's most important because, like Maddie said, in the work that she does, so too is it with me here that for me, being Mahu is irrelevant. Mahu is just an adjective. It tells you a little bit about me. I too was born my family's son, and I, upon accepting myself at least at that point in time, it wasn't full acceptance, but perhaps I should better say upon acknowledging myself and transitioning my physical presentation to the world in the way that I want people to look at me. Um, that began, a very arduous part of this journey, of which the point where I am now, I have to hand it to Sister Maddie because I was listening to her speak, and Sister, you're so much more patient than I am now. I am on a path that is of the sentiment that I'm not going to give free rent occupation in my mind and in my heart and in my spirit. If people see me for how I present myself and they use the proper pronouns, she, her, and hers, then I appreciate that. I'm grateful. But I waste no time in trying to correct people because that's taking too much energy away from me. um I know that I've been assigned by our ancestors to teach and to share, but sometimes that gets for me that gets into the weeds, and so you know, yes, if I had to identify by pronouns, she, her, hers, and you know, people should say Miss or Ms, but there's a lot of people out there that just turn a blind eye and they just listen to the voice, and so they therefore determine that they know me and they know what I'm all about, and so they sometimes they say sir, sometimes they say him and he, and hey, if they're weak and they can't muster the strength to see me with eyes that can see clearly, then well, that's them, not my issue. I waste no time. That's why, bless your heart, Maddie, you are so patient. I'll try to learn from you in this, in this time and space. But over the years, I have had opportunity to teach in so many different places and spaces, and I've taught in the community. I've taught elders, taught K through 12 for 13 years. I have what else did I have I done? Do many teaching classes within the community when it comes to language, culture, and history. And during the height of some of our most contentious of land and political struggles, I have managed to avail myself to lead and stand at the forefront, primarily because of cultural understanding and ability to speak our language, which so many of my people do not have the ability to do. I'm very fortunate to have been given the gift, and that gift has been something that has driven me and has propelled me on the road that I travel. everything that I do has to do with language, culture, and history of my people. And through this, I've learned that two words, if I could share it with you all, kulana and kuleana. It, kulana, let's everybody say that. You don't have to unmute yourself, but you say kulana. Kulana is one's rank, status, title, position, job, one's place. And kuleana, everybody say kuleana. One more time, kuleana. Kuleana, therefore, is one's duty, obligation, and responsibility. So if you know your role, you know your responsibility. You know your rank, you know your job duties, know your title, you know what comes with that title. The higher up you go, the more you have to do. And so finding myself in so many different places and spaces and being asked by different members of my community to do all kinds of things, I realized that this was the ancestors' way of saying it. Just like I heard Maddie, you said that your people asked you to come and come home and to share and to spend time because you make things whole, you make things fun. That is the role of Mahu, is we fill in the gaps. We fill in all the blank spaces. We're the ones here in Hawaii. Mahu are the ones that take care of everybody's children. We take care of our elders. We are the ones to do the real heavy work when it comes to preparation of funerals, weddings, birthdays, big events. We're the ones that are heavily relied upon. Unfortunately, in Hawaii, the coming of the settler colonialists that have taken over your lands there, those foreigners, they came here in the name of the United States of America, sat their worship out in front of our palace in Honolulu Harbor, and in 1893 proceeded to aim their guns and take away our take away our independence against our will and continue to illegally occupy my home. We are taught as a people to get over the history of the U.S. and Hawaii, and to simply accept that the United States of America is the rightful one to determine our fate and future, and is the rightful one to set in place standards, to set rules, regulations, policies. And truly, I couldn't disagree more. But given the situation that we're in, I also learned that it's most important for me to focus on what I can do for my people, and that is to help ground my people, so that if the political forces that surround us are coming from foreigners, and the politics, economics, and social system that inundate us and overwhelm us are things that all too often are too much for us to contend with, then I have to try to root and ground my people from a cultural and spiritual level. And that point that I make is that's also another element of what Mahu helped to bring here at home, is a level of spiritual connect, because we walk with knowledge that doesn't come from us, but it comes from our ancestors. So with that, I would also say that not only working with K through 12, working with elders and the general community, but I've also had a privilege to teach within the incarceration system to Hawaiian and other Pacific Island men that are currently you know, in our prison system, and they have come to my class. They come broken. They come searching, and it's up to myself and anyone else who has cultural knowledge to help restore them and reinstate them to a rightful place of existence, which that is one of the reasons why I feel the way I do about how I identify. Like Maddie, I don't use pronouns to identify myself. I simply say I'm Kanaka. And like Kane, like Wahine, or like men and women, even being Mahu, it doesn't ever supersede the fact that I'm Kanaka first. And we have a land base. So we identify by our genealogy and by our land. And so that's always got to be a focus. And I believe that that has really given way to the rise of Kumuhina, but the rise of Kumuhina would never be necessary unless there was a need to serve the community. And with that, I will wrap my sharing by saying that Kumuhina is simply a servant to the legacy of my ancestors, my people, and it falls upon me as well as others whom are able to help uplift my people and push us forward into the next millennia. I just hope that what we are able to do in the here and now will benefit the generations ahead. So, mahalo for giving me the time to share. I yield to our panel leadership. Mahalo.
Thank you both, and mahalo for sharing your journey, um, and not only for participating in today's panel, but also for being, is the word mahu, Hina, for your
Yes,
people?
it is Mahu.
I really want to thank you for doing that. Your journey is inspirational and really personally leaves me with hope. Before we wrap up today's webinar, I would like to see if there's any questions from our attendees. We do have one question in our Q&A. If there's anything you'd like to ask our panelists, you're welcome to use the chat box, the Q&A, or you can raise your hand. The question that I have, and I'll leave this open for both panelists, Yantia, what's the best way for us to advocate for our Two Spirits clients going through transition? What resources are available? Ahi.
I think the good thing about our Native LGBTQ spirit, especially our trans population, is that trans affirming healthcare and Indian health services. We do have hormone therapy on formularies on all Indian health services formularies. Indian Health Services does support trans affirming healthcare. I'm actually a peer faculty for the Northwest Portland Area Indian Health Board ECHO, Trans Affirming Healthcare ECHO. We do presentations twice a month for clinicians, mental health therapists, in working with case studies of trans populations and getting questions, asking questions, also recommendations of what best practices to use. So that's an avenue where we can support our trans populations. Possibly opening up a trans clinic in your service area would be amazing. I know in Gallup, New Mexico, Dr. Jenny Way has been influential in creating a trans clinic at the hospital where my hometown where I grew up, and she has over 150 clients that are seeing her throughout the reservation and around that area. And also in supporting our trans relatives is learning about our community, getting trainings, doing transgender 101, because a lot of times we have service providers say that, I don't know how to work with a trans person, or I don't know what to say to a trans person. I don't know how to talk to a trans person. So we're human beings. So how do you talk to a human being? so sometimes it's simple, but we make it stressful for ourselves. But I think you're asking the right questions. So there are services out there that do trainings. There are people out there that do trainings, reaching out to community. One of the biggest things that I would advocate is documentation. Is there inclusion of trans populations in your documentation? And a lot of times the answer is no, because they only have male and female, but it should be like a two-part question. And then also we forget about the intersex population. So sex assigned at birth should be male, female, or intersex. And then your gender identity could be male, female, trans woman, trans man, non-conforming, non-binary, gender variant. So having those options of data collections, and a lot of times with policies too, in trainings, one of the things that come up is people like, we can't change policy, which you can. If there's policies that are in place that are not inclusive of everybody, it can be changed. You start with the committee, you start asking questions, you go to the higher up and say, this is not right, this is discriminating, how do we change this? And it can be changed. There are toolkits out there that can help change policy. I know that there's the Two-Spirit toolkit out of, I think, National Indian Health Board, but there's a 3.0 toolkit that you could utilize. So there are some organizations that have toolkits that have posters and brochures already for Native LGBTQ Two-Spirit populations that you can put up in your clinic. So there's a lot of stuff out there that are supportive of our population. So I think it's just reaching out and asking, like, if you need me to come to Alaska and do a training, I'll be more than happy to come out if you want. Put a plug in for myself, and Hina, you could join me. So yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Okay, we have a few more minutes. Are there any other questions for our panelist?
While they're writing the question in the chat, I'd just like to say that Mahu is such a Mahu is a term that was weaponized against myself and so many others like me. But in decolonizing my own mind and my own spirit about this word, I truly realize how powerful a word it is, because it's not, it does not delineate where one is required to stand, because that's contingent completely upon the creator and one's own spirit and heart, and where one will allow oneself to go and grow. But Mahu is such an inclusive and encompassing term that you could look like any one of us. I'm looking at the top row of this panel, and you can look like Maddie, you can look like Angela, Eric, Larry, and I'm not sure I see one more Wahine that says Alaska region. You could look like any one of us, and the term Mahu might apply to you, but you know, that's again, in my synthesis of it, there'd have to be some element of duality to, I mean, there we all have it, but a more pronounced, you know, level that would indicate to outside eyes and acknowledge that you're Mahu. When it comes to same-sex relations, we have a term called Aikane, which is intimate friend of the same sex. It does not require sexual, how do I say it, sexual relations, but very well possible. It is all possible. So when we say moe aikane, or to sleep with same sex, or noho aikane, to reside with the same sex, my people have a historical understanding, and you know, I've pulled this concept in along with the term mahu to remind our people that we have a far more sophisticated society than what the West tries to impose upon us. And, you know, we don't need to explain. We don't, Hinalei Moana does not have to explain whether I have a, I don't have to explain whether I want to sleep with and to fool around with and enjoy my life. I don't have to tell anybody any of that, because it's not anybody else's business. I don't go asking, hey, Larry, how's your whatever? Or, hey, Maddie, how are you doing? Are you enjoying your, you know, like, why would I ever have to do that? It's so inappropriate. And we call the word, we say maha'oi. Well, can everybody say that word, maha'oi?
Maha'oi.
Yeah, maha'oi means impertinent, rude, nosy, and just being being out of pocket, inappropriate. So Mahaoy, it's nobody's business. We shouldn't lead ourselves into our places and spaces by our genitalia and what we like to do in the bedroom or wherever we're gonna do it. Just be lucky that we have it.
Okay,
So
oh,
there was
sorry.
two questions that I wanted to ask. So Regina, you had asked, do you know if it's legal to provide gender affirming care through IHS in states where gender affirming care is illegal? I want to say it is. I believe IHS is a separate entity, and I think this question was asked before in one of our sessions through the Echo, and I believe the answer was that that's a separate entity. So with IHS, IHS does support trans affirming healthcare, and I believe in the country, throughout the country, they're actually going after our youth. I strongly feel that they couldn't get through with the adults, so they're going after our youth and wanting to have anti transgender bills introduced and attacking our trans youth, feeling that they can't fight back. But that's how I truly feel as a trans woman, but people may feel different. So trans affirming healthcare is very important and vital for our youth because like when I came out, like if I had trans affirming healthcare when I was 15 and 16, I would have came out. I would have looked into surgery. I would have looked into puberty blockers. I would have looked into things that would have helped me in my growth. So I could get back to you on that question, but I feel that yes, you still can provide those services. And then also there's another question. What are your inputs about the attacks against the trans community across the country by politicians? Politicians are fed. So a lot of the times when they're doing not trans affirming, if they're doing anti-trans bills, like they don't know. They're taught, that's what I mean by they're thinking between our legs rather than between our ears. They're misguided. There's so many people out there that have biases and have dirty, ugly thoughts and minds. So those are the people that are believing those crazy things. Do you think these similar policies could be introduced, implemented in your Native communities by elected assimilated leaders? Yes, they can, because look at the ban on gay marriage in our Navajo Nation. That was influenced by the story out of Oklahoma where two women wanted to be married. So our tribal leaders jumped on that and had a ban on gay marriage. So that could possibly be influenced. Fortunately, we have Indian Health Services, which is already a government entity that does support trans affirming healthcare. So it would be a tough fight. Hopefully that it goes in favor of our trans populations who are receiving that healthcare, who are receiving that support. So I'm crossing my fingers that it's not going to come to that. But like I said, could be ugly. People are influenced by hate or by their own crazy, stupid ideology that they might jump on that bandwagon. So hopefully it doesn't come to that. Yeah.
I'd like to add on to that regarding this last inquiry about attacks against the trans community because my people have also unfortunately taken on much of that negativity in certain circles. I tried not to say too much to my own people just yet because that's not the real source of this. Unfortunately, my people are just following blindly because they thought somebody was cool for saying what they said, and they feel that that's something that they should follow. But really, as the question was asked by politicians, I will not hesitate to go after any politician here in Hawaii and make it rain when it comes to a lashing by the Hawaiian community. Recently, recently there were two Hawaiian elders that were mistreated by a fellow Hawaiian who was much younger, who was the general manager of the shopping mall that they went caroling around and playing Hawaiian music during the time of one of our greatest celebrations here in Hawaii. And I got on my live and nearly 78,000 views and countless shares later. There was so much backlash that the American parent company was calling me, apologizing profusely and wanting to meet with me because I launched on them. And I'm not trying to say, I'm not telling you this to speak about myself and boast about my work, but I want to hopefully inspire anybody that might need to hear this, that if you have it in you, that you're going to say something, especially for those of us in Native communities, we cannot allow outside people to dominate over us in our own spaces to the degree that we would either not take advantage of the opportunity or not invoke our cultural understandings and put people in their place, literally. I'm not saying just educate, I'm saying put people in their place. Um, you know, how do you say it? It's a pro and a con for me because over the years, taking the stances that I have and in the manner in which I've done it, it's made because I'm pushy and aggressive, and especially from being bullied. And of course, having the world look at me knowing that I'm Mahu. The world's going to say I'm trans and therefore I'm less than. Absolutely not. So I walk into spaces and places, and when I need to, I will put on the mantle of my people are warrior people. And if you declare war on my people, I will not hesitate to take you to task and remind you of your place. And so may I waken the spirits of all of my fellow natives here on this on this Zoom, that we all come from the part of us that knows how to how do I say, to be the warrior. And may we not be afraid of that. And when it comes to attacks against the trans community, I have no qualms with saying that so many of these anti-trans and anti-gay people, they're really the ones who are living the most suppressed and the most hidden of lives from personal experience. They're the ones that um, hide themselves and loathe themselves. How many times have we seen this in our communities? And so it's not okay. And yes, these policies have there have been efforts to promulgate them in our community here. One recently, just about 2 months ago, one of our current state is Democratic ruled state. So the Republicans, because we are governed by American bipartisan politics, the Republicans are such a minority here that they're really loud, some of them. However, we have some wonderful Republicans because they orient themselves to being Hawaiian first and therefore don't try to submit to the larger, the larger current of mindset. But anyway, one one Republican representative was really vocal about one of our local middle schools, and there was a little rainbow sticker outside the door of the principal. So he went on his social media and praised the school for so many things. And then in the video, he walked to the door and pointed out the sticker and asked the people the rhetorical question: is this what we should be promoting? Is this the kind of influence we want to have, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And so our Republican senator, who happened to go to that school, well, who happened to be connected to the principal of that school, he launched a social media attack response, and that attack response made the news headlines. And so here it is, the two Republicans, are their faces are in the news. And I got on my social media and said to the Republican representative, I want a meeting with you. Have your people call me. Sent it off. I wasn't even going to look for his number to call his office. I just said, call me. Well, sure enough, he called me a day later and I set a meeting with him. The meeting was totally pointless and useless because he's a complete tool and not much in between his ears. However, the organization that I work for, which is the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement, you can all check us out at hawaiiancouncil.org. Again, that's Hawaiian Council. Oh, here, let me. Oh, maybe if somebody can type that in, hawaiiancouncil.org. Anyway, my boss called me at 10 o'clock at night when everything was hitting the news headlines and said, pardon me, we don't have any children in here, so I'm going to be blunt. My boss said, hey, see this over here? Well, him. We're going to fix him. And so our organization was the host and sponsor of a large community parade. It was primarily driven by the Hawaiian community, but included everybody else around us. And so first thing he said was, you know what? He told Hina, I want you to organize a Mahu walking unit. I said, there's only 2 more days. I can't do that in 2 days. And I need to be there, and I'm not going to be there. You know, I'm going to be in a stage performance. So then he says, okay, wait. And then 2 hours later at midnight, he's typing a letter, and he sent it to me, officially uninviting the state representative from our parade. So he got kicked out. And we did it on the news and say that we uninvite you because you are inappropriate and inconsistent with the values of the Hawaiian leader, one of our late Prince Kuhio Kalaniana Ole, who served in American Congress and helped to promulgate the Native Hawaiian, the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act in 1920. And so, yep, that made the headlines the very next day. And that was at least our community's response to this kind of foolishness, thinking that he should exercise that here in Hawaii. So, you know, I'm fortunate, very, very fortunate that I run hand in hand with a leader as his attaché and ambassador, that he's unafraid to do such things. And I think that's how we exercise our authority and our ability to lead. You know, don't tolerate what they do, just, you know, put them in their place. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think we are just about ready to wrap up the webinar. Again, on behalf of ANA and the Alaska Region TTA Center, thank you both for your time, your commitment, and sharing your journey with us today. We do have an evaluation link for attendees in the chat. If you could possibly fill that out, that would be fantastic. It always helps getting feedback on the content of the webinars. And before I close this off, Larry, do you have any thoughts or anything you'd like to say to the presenters?
We honor to both of you. I appreciate you sharing your time with us and your journey. And hopefully many of the folks that attended came away with something.
Mahalo, mahalo nui.